Okay, so today's session really, it is I think, a really interesting topic where we're going to be talking about, I guess, humans and AIs and where we got to so far, where we think it's going, what the practicalities of how it's already changed roles in progressive companies, and therefore what's going to come through, I think, to other organizations. So for those that don't know our audience, I'm Steve Dineen, president and founder. Lee, do you want to introduce yourself?
I will, Steve, yes. Co-founder of a business called Elev-8 Performance. So being in the performance world, doing a lot in learning, development, and coaching. So nice to see everyone, and thank you for joining.
And Charles?
Yeah, Charles Jennings here, former Chief Learning Officer, business school professor, and worked in the area of workplace learning for more than 40 years now.
And probably half of them, we know each other. The best half, obviously, right, Charles?
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right, Steve. Yeah.
And I think we are waiting for Donna. Although, Alex, are you posing for Donna there?
I'm here.
Donna's on.
You got Donna. I didn't see you there, Donna.
You didn't notice me. What can I say, Steve?
I think all the other people in the thing. So I've only got 4 people on my thing. Amazing. So Donna, do you want to introduce yourself? I can give you a drum roll, but I think you're better even yourself. You go for it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Know most people on this call, actually. Charles, Steve, and Lee. So Donna Johnston, been in the learning space for the last 20 odd years. And this is an area particularly that I'm passionate about. So really happy to be here.
Amazing. Well, let's get started. This is the overagenda. The idea is, guys, is to make this 2 ways and participative. I managed to say that. So there are 3 logical sections which we're going to look at. And after each section, we would love to have a part where the audience participates, asks us questions, come off the mic and asks us questions coming in. If not, I'm sure the panel and the rest of us can talk happily on this topic for a couple of days. Not that you're going to be here for a couple of days. So let's jump away that. So if I just frame, I think, this hour and how we're going to try to tackle what is a really chunky subject. What we're going to try and do is use the metaphor analogy of a program design to show how the roles and the tools are now being used and how we think are going to be used to reshape each of those L&D roles and the functions each does. So we're going to look at the metaphor of a program design, maybe take someone like management training as a program, look at right from the beginning of how that changes the person or the people coming up with that program in the first place. How do we do that better, more consistently, more in tune with impactful ways? Then we're going to jump into, and we're going to specifically look at tools and AI tools that are helping actually do that in a better way. Then we're going to dive into all the creation, curation, and consumption parts. Lots of C's inside here. And we should add community in to do the 5 C's. But on the creation part, we'll look again at where does the human where's the human involved? Where do they best add value? Where does the AI best add value? Same with the curation bit, and then same obviously on the actual end user experience and the consumption bit. And then the last section we'll go into then is kind of post-program support, where there's things like coaching, communities come in. When do we use AI? When do we use human? And ultimately, how do we use the both to the benefit of the individual and to organization? So that's the flow. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. Some of those we'll bring out to conversation, and some of those we'll answer in the conversation in the background. So maybe first of all, Charles, I think it's always great, and I'm happy to come off for a second, but if you want to frame, I guess, the famous terms you've always talked about, from order taken to value creation. The reason why I put this here is I think it's super important to understand why we're doing this. Why are we interested in evolving the L&D functions and to utilize this amazing tool with AI we now have?
Yeah, Steve, I think in my work, when I was Chief Learning Officer, I used to laugh and say, actually, I'm not terribly interested in learning, but I'm passionate about performance, because I think we can often get tied up with thinking of learning as being the final output of what we do. Whereas, of course, learning is a process that we support and we build solutions in order to support it. But actually what we're doing is trying to help our teams, our people, our clients perform. And for me, I think we need to think about how we can blend human and AI for what I would call continuous learning. In other words, to break out of this order taking box. I mean, we all get forced into it for certain reasons, of course, with compliance and so on. But the work I've done over the years in looking at the value that we really create for our organizations, it's not done through order taking. It's done through a whole range of other things. When we look at the performance, for example, when we know what we're going to measure before we start, when we're utilizing tools such as AI to support human performance and augment human performance. In other words, just moving this from this business model of being an order taker to being a real value creator. And that slide you showed there, Steve, had both the 70-20-10 Institute and Bob Mosher's 5 Moments of Need logos at the bottom there. And I think both of us, Bob and I have known each other for many years. We've both been focused very much in terms of how do we do this and how do we address this in terms of a continuous learning process, and how do we support learning, not just by developing a course and not just by creating content, but how do we do it by all sorts of other things? How do we support processes? How do we support people in order to get access to the right coaching, to the right people, access to expert and exemplary performers to understand exactly what they do, because we know learning is not just about passing courses or going through courses. I have never seen an expert emerge from a training course or a learning course in my career. If any of you have seen an expert emerge from a training course, I'd really be interested to talk to you, because what we're doing here is thinking about how the power of AI can be used in order to make what we do, first of all, more efficient, but secondly, really step up and move us from this order taking model into the business model, the L&D business model of really creating value. So I'm going to stop talking.
Well, I think that perfectly dovetails, I think, into Donna. So Donna, from actually someone who's now a practitioner who very much buys into everything should have purpose and impact. Maybe, yeah, great if you want to come into that point and talk through from your lens and that commercial lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess one of the observations I do want to talk about is what I've seen in different organizations where I have been based, is that, you know, people come to us and say, I need this learning program, or I've got this particular problem to fix. And there's something for me about how do we turn learning and development into a commercial function. So one that is seen to be commercial, that's adding value to the organization, that's moving the needle on culture change, that's driving our leaders to future-proof the organization. So for me, there's something about really getting under the skin of what are the business objectives, what is it that we're trying to drive, what business performance are we trying to change? And my view is, if we're not ticking the boxes on those things, then we shouldn't be doing it anyway. I mean, that's just my view. So there's something for me about how we're really clear on our learning objectives up front, well, our performance objectives, not learning objectives, our performance objectives up front, that then feeds through that program, which is going to be truly blended, where you're really embedding it and then linking that back to those business objectives at the end to see whether we've actually met that need. Now, that's something I'm quite passionate about, and this is where I've been working with Lee and talking to Steve about this, because to me, if we're not doing that, then how is it any surprise that our learning budgets get cut, or is it any chance that when the business is going through challenges that they cut the HR functions? And that's because, in my view, we're not seen as a commercial department, because the way we talk about learning is not done in the right way. The way we're talking about impact is not done in the right way. So for me, this has been a real bugbear of mine that I've really been trying to drive in terms of change across the different organisations in which I work.
And just before I introduce into Lee, I think, again, if I looked at one of the challenges that you had, right, that is, it's great to have that mindset that you have. But then the second thing is you need some type of framework, right, to work against. So whether that's a 70-20-10 framework or a 5DI or an Elev-8 way, which Lee's going to come in now and talk about the Elev-8 way. But even if you buy into that framework, is then how do you get everyone using a framework that's designed for performance to be consistent across it? How do you accelerate everyone towards it? And I think that's what Lee's going to come in now and talk a little bit, I think, on two things, right? Maybe Lee just introduced the Elev-8 way, and then you can talk about the first AI tool, which is how does the AI tool help actually solve Donna's challenge of how do you scale that in an organization quickly?
Yeah, and thanks, Steve. Thank you, Donna. And I suppose Donna's point there about calling it a commercial function. I suppose another word for that could be a value center. I mean, right now, you know, with the background I've got in learning and development, and some of the teams and the L&D folk that I speak to, they would say that their team and their department is very much seen as a cost center. And I think there's not many people in learning that would say that that's a complete surprise, that learning is seen as a cost. So, I mean, Dr. Omar, I can see, is on the event, and we were talking last week, and we were at an event where a lot of the conversation around where learning has embraced AI, and I can't claim this as my own, but I heard someone talking about, why would you only be focused on driving efficiency in a cost center? You should do that. That's the number one priority, because the number one thing you want to do is make sure that cost is as efficient as possible. But essentially what you're trying to do there is you're almost proving the point that it's a cost. I think, to Donna's point about trying to make sure that your department, your team, is seen as creating value, is where does AI really try to accelerate your ability to drive performance in a business? So, echoing everything there that Charles and Donna have said. So tip number one, if you're not using AI for efficiency, you're missing an absolute trick right now. So, and the beauty is you can go to ChatGPT and you can type that prompt into ChatGPT and it'll give you the answer. So how do I drive efficiency in my learning team? And it will, you can research quicker, you can build graphics and infographics, you can help it to write content to a degree, but it can certainly help you. But I think for me, it's not about, we're not replaceable by AI, but we can definitely find ourselves a few more hours in the day so that you can focus on performance, which is ultimately what we should be trying to do out in the business. So if you was to, I don't know if it's just worth putting the slides back up, Steve, but the Elev-8 way, introduce it. It's nothing more than what we should all have in our learning functions, which is a framework to delivering performance out in a business. So not just taking orders for learning, but how we really determine the performance need, to Donna's point. What's the commercial objective we're trying to establish here? And therefore, once we've set our objective and we know what future state looks like, well, where are we against that? What's the gap? We've got to do some discovery for that. And that's not just about a training needs analysis. That's deep-rooted evaluation into the business that said that what we're going to do here is going to change behavior. And that's not just learning, that's environmental and all of the things that we know is conducive to driving behavior change. And so words we'll all recognize. We've then got to design something, we've got to deploy it, we might iterate it, but we definitely have to embed it and we have to sustain it, and then we have to measure the impact so that we can truly prove whether we are commercially adding value. So I don't think anyone would probably disagree that they're the right things to do. So the Elev-8 way to introduce is nothing but our way that we do that when we work with businesses. We're a learning and development business, essentially. But when Donna brought the challenge that we would like to drive a consistent learning function, what we've done is we've essentially taken our Elev-8 way, the way that we do things, and we've worked with Donna on creating her version. And so that's the framework that we hope that we can drive a consistency in Donna's business. But here's the thing for me. So if I share my screen, where this is the opportunity to get AI to help to drive performance, it for me is here. So I'm going to do a demo. I'm going to do a system demo live on a webinar. So what could possibly go wrong? Probably my internet. Just quick thumbs up from someone visually. Charles, Steve, are you seeing that okay? Okay, so I've got the Elev-8 way here in a coach, in an AI coach. So what we're doing with Donna is we're taking that framework of how we do end-to-end performance analysis, review, design, and evaluation. And if you put the guidance, some templates, some examples of where we've done it before into that coach, then through some, and I've got to copy and paste my prompt so you don't have to watch me try and type this on the screen. Essentially, I'm going to start off with a question. And you can take everything that you're doing in your corporate learning teams right now and load it into a coach like this. And I suppose the beauty, hopefully you will know what AI is doing. It's not just sourcing and finding information in one document, but it might be taking multiple documents and bridging an answer out of those documents. So I've asked the question, what are the key feedback themes from our employees about the customer experience we provide in our business? So what it's done is it's taken, this isn't Donna's employee engagement, by the way. This is a mocked up version for the purpose of this demo. But it's looked in our employee engagement scores. And it started to look in some other files. These are the files here. And it's saying, okay, what can I find in the data that I've given it? And you can load data into any AI coach, and it's done sentiment analysis. So brilliant. I mean, AI and sentiment analysis, absolutely fantastic. You know, it's stopped us spending money going external to do that kind of work. And it's brought me back some responses. It doesn't really matter what it's saying at this point. I'm just demonstrating that it can search inside your database and get you some answers. And I go, okay, so I've got a bit of insight into where we might be getting customer experience go wrong. So can you now help me create an observation template so I can look for these things in call listening? Because what I'm looking for, and I know Steve talks a lot about this, is if I want to bridge the gap on performance, why not find your high performers and profile how they do it? So to do that, you've got to do some analysis on them. So I put a prompt into my coach here. This is my learning coach, and it's going to go and find a way that I can do call listening. And it looks in an existing performance template, and it's created me a brand new template, one that I didn't have before. And I might want to tweak it. There's always the role of the human to add my expertise for this, but it's given me the basis for a performance template already, and I can start there. And that's both efficient, but also it's taking best practice out of our databases and giving me some answers. So not going to spend too much longer on this. I've got a couple more prompts I'm going to show you how it can work you through the system, the Elev-8 way, or whatever processes you've got. So now I want to ask, can you help me design a program of learning for these customer service agents, please? Design me a possible structure of learning. And it will take the information that you've given it. If you've done some things before and they've worked, get them in your AI coach. Get them in your database. Let the AI do the hard work for you and find what could be a way that we build self-paced digital pathways. We might have some self-assessment. We might do some face-to-face workshops where we actually get to see the whites of their eyes and change some behavior in that environment. Some social learning communities to help with that tacit knowledge and human coaching, peer coaching aspect, gamification, and the list goes on. So great, okay, I've got a place to start. And then for me, this is where we finish up this little demo, is thinking about, okay, now make me help you commercial. So I want an evaluation framework and I want some metrics. Now, of course, you can go into ChatGPT and type these things in, right? But the thing with ChatGPT is going to go open source. It's going to go to the internet and it's going to bridge everything out there and bring you an answer. But you can create AI coaches that will only look in your data. And that's the key thing here for what we're doing with Donna, is we're building a framework that's right for her business. And what we want to drive is consistency for those people in that learning function. So it's not only telling me the 5 levels that I could evaluate the program, but it's also giving me, because it looks in a role profile for a customer experience advisor, I've also got the metrics in which I might want to baseline and I might want to assess. So hopefully you can see just how you can make AI work for you by looking across multiple documents, frameworks, guidance, and best practice. And it can start to step you into that commercial place, that value creator, and help you create a value center in your business. So thank you for watching my little demo. Nothing went wrong, I don't think. So
yeah, that was all good. That was all good. Yeah, and as you say, so obviously these AI agent, AI coach within inside the Infuse environment. Lee's going to show us a second coach inside this environment later on at the end, which is that more kind of role-based stuff, which is how to support the program in life and after life, being the management coach or sales coach and so forth. But an easy way to get access to all of those. So let's any questions from the audience first. I'm aware of the fact that we, definitely in the case of Lee and I'm definitely a talker, but anyone want to ask a question before we dive into the next section, which is around the whole curation piece?
Phil Whitehouse. Hiya.
Hey, Phil.
But quick question, I guess, Lee, in terms of the obviously the stuff that you've just demonstrated there, a lot of that is ultimately, I'm assuming it's ultimately content that's been loaded into the system. That would be processes, that would be pitch documents, that might be a way of working, it might be whatever it might be in terms of internal training programs that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
That's ultimately just loading that content into a library of resource, which could effectively be, I guess, a private community in Fuse in some way. is an employee. So our Fuse platform is we've got a learner platform, and ultimately we're probably thinking about now an employee platform or a staff room within it. That's where that content is loaded. So it's in a private community, and then the system is ultimately scraping that private community. Or do you have to set where those things are?
So actually,
Yeah, go on, Steve.
Yeah, just technically do that. So in essence, the way that the coaches work is you've got a coach, you're configuring it, how to behave, what's how you want it to behave and all the bias and the non-bias it has to have. And then you're pointing at bodies of knowledge. So basically, just like the current AI answers piece, you can say, I want it to look at just this one community, this one body of knowledge, or maybe look across 3 or 4 different bodies of knowledge. So it's up to you. It's up to the configuration of that and the flexibility. The whole thing is it's all that easy flexibility to allow people with that AI skills to create coaches for different purposes from different bodies of knowledge.
And Steve, just to add to that, so for this particular coach, we're building it a learning framework that Donna would like to run her business, run her learning function from. So it's got guidance and it's got a framework, but also to your point, when you do something really well, load all those files in and it will learn from what you've done well. So that helps to build an image of best practice. But the other thing is, I showed an example there. You could put your employee engagement scores in. You can put sales performance data in, customer service metrics in. So with the more data that you feed it from the business, the more that it will help tailor your responses around the business that's right for you. So what I did is I added some generic role profiles into that coach so that it could think about customer service. Now, here's the clever bit though. I put a complaints handler and a customer service agent role profile into the system. I could show you now that if I ask it to build me a framework for a retentions agent, it will be, because it has the role profile but not a framework, it will bridge the two. So it creates a framework from complaints and a role profile from retentions and starts building me intuitive tools. So creating things that don't exist is the clever place it goes as well.
Guys, I'm just aware of time and we're still in the first section, and I think there's a Mark, you had a question with your hand up.
I feel like it might come later, so feel free to disregard this now. But it's about the energy usage for using AI over, say, a Google search and potential, with any new technology, emerging technology, there seems to become this initial over-reliance on it. So people might be using a technology instead of, say, an existing technology, a new technology over an existing technology. And in the case of Google versus, say, ChatGPT, there's a 10 times higher energy use for the use.
I think there was until that DeepSeek stuff came out a couple of weeks ago, which is why you saw Nvidia's share price tumble. So I don't know if you saw some of that stuff, but what you'll see is, in the early days, there's a lot of overuse of technology and, let's say, GPUs and servers to process that information. What this company, the Chinese company, did was they worked out a new way of doing it. That's a fraction of that cost of doing it, which is why the cost we're buying it at now, which means that the cost we're selling it at is actually far less now, because we're seeing GPU or the big massive server and the server's costs come down. It's why Nvidia's share price crumbled a couple months ago. I think we'll see that continue, I think, month to month, year on year. I mean, the cost of it crumbling is like almost 10 times per year. For the same type of search you could do a year ago, it's about 10 times cheaper today. What will happen, though, is obviously there are new things coming out like video curation, which those things take higher until it comes down again. But let's continue to have that. There's another. Actually, let me jump on, because I'm aware of the fact that or was there a question in the chat there? Was there a little question coming there? Oh, sorry, just
Martina was dropping off.
Yeah, no worries. We'll make sure we get that out. Okay, so let's hit on the next part towards it, right? Which is, again, when we look at human and AI, and where do we play? Where does human play best, and where does the AI play best? So we're going to take, again, the actual the program itself and kind of chunk that up into each part, right the way from the ideation part, the right way through to post-program community type piece. My perspective, I think, from working with this now for quite a while, is, first of all, we have to respect the fact that the AI is only as smart as what you feed it. So that new knowledge still needs to be created, right? Humans still need to create that knowledge. We still need to have those ideation moments, those breakthrough knowledge. But at the same time, I think we recognize, and I think they're now saying, we're now doubling the amount of knowledge every 12 months. And the speed of new knowledge creation is just insane, right? So, but that is a reality, right? And if we look at most organizations, they have a challenge of how do you get the knowledge out of people's heads quick enough into the people to consume it, understand it, and apply it in a way that allows the business to be efficient. my take is the AI now allows us, the humans, to focus what we're good at, and the AI to focus on what's it good at. So that means for us is let us learn, let us ideate, let us create. There's going to be a premium on that for the people who have those breakthrough ideas and the creativity. I think the second bit, from my side, I think video captures are the quickest, fastest way to extract out that knowledge from the experts, and then let an AI do the hard work from that video piece, which we'll now show, right? So to me, that if I look at the skill sets, in teams, the skill set of the videographer, the extractor, the person that's going to do that, is still absolutely a key part towards it. I think the bit that then we see AI really now transforming is the process that goes from I've got the extraction to I've got something much more meaningful to an audience in a much more effective time, whatever type modes. So if we take a practical example, here's a piece of content that we extracted from one of our best people in the company. He's the best person at asking questions to discover client problems. So every organization wants to drive sales revenue. So for us, that's a particular type of challenge. So typical interview process, where you've got now the expert's head, the journalistic style interview, the expert is now in a 1 hour of raw interview. If I then look at the next part, so this is where actually it's a tool we just released today. So an AI tool, which is I can now basically say, well, let me connect to that body of knowledge. Let me tell it what it's about. So create me a lesson on great discovery using that video knowledge I've got. I can give it a bit of information about the learner. So it's enterprise salespeople. Tell it about what I want to do. I want to give base understanding, the foundation understanding towards it. I want the tone to be friendly and warm and maybe humorous. I do this for my kids' homework, to be fair. I upload their homework, and then I tell it in the tone of anime Japanese cartoons for an ADHD kid that's 13 years old in the UK part, create him a lesson to teach them what the homework's about, just in case a teacher didn't do a great job. And it will do that whole thing for me. I might just want to enhance it, say, actually do a bit of work to give me a better prompt. So the AI will actually make the AI better before I then go off and actually say at the bottom there, continue. And actually now how much interactivity do I want, and a whole bunch of other options I can do. If I then say go off and generate that, within probably a minute or two, I've probably got to here, which is that storyboard, right? An automated storyboard that you can see down here at level by level. It's clipped the videos. So it's taken the 1 hour video and it's suggested this clip of the video, which I can manually refine afterwards, along with images and so forth towards it. So I might want to look at this one and say, actually, I want to change that image, and maybe let's put that image of there's 2 men, don't want to have that. So actually listening to a female client, let's say that. Put that in. Give me a new image at the bottom here. I'm going to put that one inside there ready to go, right? So every single part to it, whether it's a bit of video, whether it's an image, whether it's a bit of text, I can then go through and just switch that out. And it's the same for the whole thing to it, right? So I'm using AI to both create it and to augment it and to, in essence, get me there 80% of the way faster towards that. And then what's really cool about that, right, is then if I then want to then say, oops, not that bit, get to here, and I then want to say, also add some narration, put some voice in there. So all the text, because again, my kids and my sales guys, not that they're in the same bracket always, but text to speech is nice. So I can put that inside there and say, give me a text to speech. Likewise, I can then say, give me 5 languages. These are the languages I want to add. I want to add inside there, and click a button, and away I go. And again, in a few minutes, I've now got a multilingual, multimodal course. That is, so this is it sitting inside Fuse. I don't know actually if it's going to play my audio. Let's give it a go. Actually, does it play that?
Sales discovery. This module.
Did you hear that, guys? When I played the audio? Maybe I'll share that button again with was that a yes? Oh, there's a little button I've got to say share sound. Yeah, let's go with that. So just showing here.
Explores the crucial role of sales discovery.
Then maybe let's say, again, within a couple of seconds, I then want to say, actually, let's put that in Spanish.
Descubrimiento de ventas. Este módulo explora el papel crucial del descubrimiento de ventas en la consecución de resultados de ventas satisfactorios. Un descubrimiento eficaz implica comprender las necesidades, los retos y los objetivos del cliente.
Let's go. So, and again, and because Charles, I don't want Charles to hate me forever. So then to the point, if I then want to access that knowledge in more that learning the flow type of part, I can type in any language, a question like, okay, but I've forgotten that stuff. So I went through a course, I went through my onboarding. It was 3 months ago. I can't remember that now. I can't remember which course to go to. and I want to have that more performance support, task-based capability. So I can just ask a question like, how do I identify a champion in a call? And you can see it'll either bring back the resources it thinks matches, or have that kind of that conversational type approach to extract the answer out there. So we do this on all the content that is AI indexed, and then the coaches use then for more specific purposes. And you see here, I can then follow up all the way through. So I just want to hit that first one, right, which was now if we think about that, the role of the teams and even my teams, right, it's a different, the teams doing that I think is still key. We still need to find these experts, we still need to extract their knowledge, but now the actual content creation piece, if you like, to create content that is in I guess a way that's preferential to the audience, to give them choice in both curation, both around their language, their modality, their moment of need. All those things is pretty much in a way automated that we couldn't do before AI. Beforehand, we pretty much had to deliver, a black and white type event. So is that important? Well, I think it is. As a person who is neurodiverse, I recognize my difference in his learning preferences to someone that's autistic. I recognize that I prefer things to be visual, to be highly stimulated, and to things that need to maintain my attention. Whereas a friend of mine who runs a business around neurodiversity who's autistic, her preference is short, succinct, doesn't like the video piece, wants to read it in a short, succinct type way. So again, our challenge historically is, how do you serve all audiences? How do you serve your different neurodiverse audiences, your different moment of need audiences, your different language audiences, all those things? And again, I think that's what's beautiful now, is in a reduced period of time, we can now serve all our audiences in a much faster, better way. And for example, what we just showed there is that ability to extract out the expert knowledge from the best person in a task, in a way that's multimodal. So some could watch and listen to Casey. They could just listen to them, in kind of a podcast style way. They could read the summary or the part towards it. For some people, love the interactions, like, Donna, Laura's in another ADHD brother, sister of ours. And she loves the quizzes and the games. At the same time, sometimes you want to then chat to the person. We can now search for that piece of content, either chat to the human who's made the content, because the content's associated with Casey, had that social interaction, or chat to the AI in either one or two formats we showed. But again, just emphasizing that part, how that really changes the experience designer's job. And it is interesting, right? I think if you look at the next piece where we see human and AI really hand in hand, the curation bit is probably much more AI. So if you look at the things we don't want our teams really wasting time on, things like manually tagging content, or manually stringing things together, we want the AI personalizing in the same way that YouTube does and other platforms does, that understands you, understands your strengths, understands when you get to, at the same time allows you to type stuff in to say, help me get better. But we expect now, I think, the AI to do a lot of the heavy lifting to create that personalized environment. Whereas I think if we come to the third bit in this piece, the evolution experience designer, historically they had two choices: at a classroom event, or an e-learning course. It probably much in one single mode. What we're now seeing is, now I do think now finally we got to a place where it's about having a palette of colors. They have a range of different tools, 10, 20 different tools to use, and their job now, with potentially the support of a kind of an AI coach, how do I design that program that's specific to the audience and specific to the outcome that Donna and Charles talked about earlier on. So let me part there before we go to maybe the final section, which is then about how we start to use AI and humans in post support. Maybe I should open up that piece to the audience to see any thoughts or questions that may come through. Reflections on that, on the creation piece of the content, and whether you think that potentially changes some of your teams, or just curious. Maybe Charles, you come in. What's your thoughts? I know you'd be a big, like both of us, where we were quite anti-Corson for a while, but does this change your mind a bit?
Absolutely, Steve. Just whilst we're waiting for any other thoughts to come, for people to raise any questions or comments, I think for years I've said one of the challenges that most L&D leaders and L&D teams would recognise is there's an inherent inertia in terms of producing courses and producing L&D solutions formal L&D solutions. And that inherent inertia is the fact that, you know, you understand the need, and then you go away and you actually build the content, and you do all the validation and so on. What you've just described actually is an example of overcoming that inherent inertia. So it improves the efficiency at such a high level that you can produce the solutions almost in real time. I mean, obviously you have to gather the expert or the exemplary performer data and so on, but it takes away a big chunk of that inertia. And I mean, I'm sure we've all been there where, you know, some senior executive has said, Charles, Steve, whoever, Donna, we need a new program on this, or we need a revision of a program on this, and you get your team to go away and do it, and by the time they've done it, 6 months is expired and they've moved on to other things. This allows L&D, this allows us to do it almost in real time. So it takes away that inertia, and I think that's a big win in terms of L&D responding rapidly and being able to really meet the requirements, as I say, almost in real time.
And Donna,
Can I add to that, Steve?
Yeah, go.
Because I think you hit a good point, Charles. Like, how do you iterate, or how do you build on it, or how do you then roll out a similar program for another audience? And it can save a lot of time with that, and it can be intuitive. I think the other thing it can do, which I see a lot of learning functions don't invest a lot of time in, is learning marketing. So how do you go and create the appetite in the business for the massive investment and investment in time that you've gone to create? Is actually, if you've got the content, it can help you then repackage that in terms of marketing for material for your content, not just the content itself.
Yeah, and I think to me the other big thing is inclusivity, right? I think what I'm really, because I think the time to create content for different audiences, whether that's you're trying to create it for different roles and the nuances of that, different preferences and all the things we talked about inside there, it's tough, right? I mean, it's almost impossible to do it unless you've got like infinite budgets. I think what's really exciting, and it was interesting just seeing my kids interact with a piece of content, and actually some prefer to listen, some prefer to read, some prefer to listen at different times in the day. But giving those, I think giving choice and having something that gives choice and preference, I think is a truly exciting moment. Charles, you're going to come in there.
No, I was just going to. I'm just responded to Phil Whitehouse saying that you know, this is actually rapid e-learning was talked about 20 years ago, and this really does provide the opportunity for doing that. And it's not just rapid e-learning; it's actually, I would call it rapid solution development.
Well, and I think that's I think to your piece, Charles, there, right? I think what I was really scared about, the reason why I didn't love AI courses before was because it was limiting the performance support piece, right? You couldn't do it in a way that actually, you know, it's just that 10% bit. But if we could do it, build it, which is why I'm really excited about this piece, it's the way supporting your performance support automatically with no overtime. Yeah, there's a couple of questions coming in. Eva, do you want to come first?
Yes, thanks. Hi, everyone. A very interesting discussion. I recently was kind of a bit surprised. We were working with the businesses really to overcome some hurdles in creating learning solutions, and especially for deep expertise knowledge, right? So solutions for people who really need to understand the technical side of things. Now, when we were discussing that, I thought the main hurdle was the speed of creating the learning pieces themselves. But what the main hurdle actually was is getting the knowledge from the SMEs out of them and then turn that into the learning solution, right? So, and I'm very interested in finding ways, because we work with people who retired. And we asked them coming back to the organization and spent a huge amount of time doing interviews with them and stuff to drag all that knowledge out of them and then turn that into e-learnings and stuff like that. How can we make that process much more efficient? Because apparently that's the biggest time consumption we have, right?
Well, before we come to Terry is really funny. I saw your name was, I couldn't see the thing. I said, who's Chalter? Then I was, oh, it's Terry. Anyway, before we come into that bit, let me just put one perspective on that, right? Because if I think my personal journey outside of Fuse, which actually Terry and everyone, a lot of people here know, right, is I've worked in the background to create something called Fuse School, which is 1,000 videos educating. We have 200 million views on YouTube, educating 13 to 16-year-old kids in the secondary school education system. To do that, though, right, it took a long time, right? And to your bit, we went and found the best teachers we could find, and then we interviewed them. But then I had to animate all the visuals and so forth towards it, right? That took a big time and cost. The reason I'm really excited about these type of tools now is the interviewing process is actually quite quick. With the right skill set, right? That piece actually, if you've got a journalistic approach, that's the really easy bit. It's all the other bit afterwards, right? That takes up all the time towards it. So that's why I'm super excited about these tool sets now that we're taking and we're seeing and integrating in. That allows that bit to be done 10x the time. Terry, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add. I mean, I love what Everett said, and one of the things that we struggled with, and I work for a company called Hilti, and we've been on this journey with Fuse for a lot of years, but we struggle with exactly what you're talking about. We spend all of this time building these high level journeys and learning journeys and all that, but really that's not the issue. The issue is, how do you take a perfect world learning journey but adapt that to a real world experience? So people come into the role at different times and at different places, and you may come in as a salesperson to be assigned to a big project that's already 6 months into the project, and you're at the first month of your learning journey. Well, wait a minute, I'm in gate 1, you guys are in gate 4. How do I mix and match that? So we've gone away from a lot of that, and we build a lot of content. Steve, you know this. We build a lot of content that is very easily searchable, that falls right into this AI coach piece, because what we find is the perfect journey, the perfect world training. We're not going to lock our people in a room for 6 months till they get it. We're gonna try to fit that model to them. But really, how do we build it to where they can go and do an easy search, or having a coach or an assistant drive that knowledge and still get credit for it in their perfect journey as well? Because you don't want to redo that piece. So for us, that was the big change for us. How do we make small content? How do we use articles and other things to really drive this? And it helped us with that question of how do we get that content from the SMEs? We have, in a company of 38,000 employees, we have about 3,500 SMEs that write on Fuse every 6 months because it's easy and they do it. So these new tools will just make it even easier for us. And so I appreciate that.
And I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing I was going to say there, Terry. I think definitely in the case of you, me, Charles, Donna, and so forth, that known each other for a long time, I think the vision is pretty much the same. What the tools allow doing is doing it better, faster, more efficiently, and achieving a better end result. The end result I think we all agree, is that performance piece. This just allows us to get there quicker, right? And to reduce the admin and get rid of the not so great stuff.
But I think also, sorry, Steve, I think it's also about, I mean, for me, and maybe I'm a bit out there, but I don't think we have a perfect learning journey. Because for me, this is where we're using the best of the technology, with the adaptive, it's driving you in the right area, if it's right for you. I think it's more about getting the right skills up front. I think it's more about having the right data that you're able to mine to get the best output. And I think it's also about, where does your knowledge layer sit also, so that if you are using bot technology or whatever it may be, you're starting to pull that information out at the right time. And for example, if you've got SME content in there and you've got all of that technology that supports it, it's a lot easier to pull that information out. So for me, it's more about the flexibility. How are you using the data, the questions you're asking up front, how you're getting the information out of people's brains. And I think what Steve's offering is, with the technology that we've got and the way that technology is going, actually in L&D, it's making our jobs a lot easier, right?
Did you say knowledge layer?
Yeah,
that's
knowledge
great.
layer.
I'm stealing that one. Sorry, Terry, I normally steal your stuff and Charles' stuff. Donna, that's definitely copywriting that one. I love that, knowledge layer. Ooh, that's cool. You're going to see that on a bit of marketing. Make sure, yeah, inside there. Okay, all right. Let's get onto the next, the final hurdle, right? So we talked about how AI is helping some design. Talked about it, creation, curation, consumption, and then kind of into this final piece here, right? Which is, how do we help again? Where does it fit, and where does human fit for it in life? So post the actual formal event aspects towards it, and in life, how's it helping with us? So we've been using things for a while, like nudging. Obviously, again, people like Donna and Terry and others that are on the field, you've all used the community aspect of Fuse. I don't see that going away. I absolutely see communities, and because that since the tribal fire, if you like, is still part towards it. But obviously, what we do see is not having to get the experts answering the same questions, the same time, the same day, over and over again. How do we reduce the SME time so we're capturing it once, and therefore they're benefiting the whole organization? I think what we're going to talk about now, right, is this area. So we talked about AI coaching for the L&D person. Now to talk about it in life. Obviously, we know that human coaching is a thing that's not going to go away, but we also know that the scalability of that is also a challenge. So with that in mind, I think we get into maybe the next demo, which I think, Lee, you're up again to just show us, maybe talk about a practical thing, how you and Don are looking at this in one area. I know that Terry, we're doing work together on the sales coach and how do you help. And that might be good for you to come in, talk a bit about that. But before we do that, maybe Donna, if you want to come in, Lee, come in with Donna around the management coach.
Yeah, and I think, thanks, Steve. Charles, you mentioned earlier, never have created an expert through a training course. And I think, we get to work with a lot of organizations where they don't invest or put the effort in the coaching. And that's where a program can fall over, because then it's just a deployment of knowledge. And I think, everyone would probably subscribe to that. I think in an ideal world, you get managers really spending time and investing in their people and coaching them. And that can be hard, but from a sustainability perspective, it's got to be the ambition. And we spend a lot of time in businesses trying to get onto the shop floor and coaching, and it's tough, right? And it's time consuming, and it's cost consuming. It's an investment consuming activity. But where AI is really changing the game for us is where we can deploy a program of learning, whatever medium you're deploying that learning, but then all of that content can sit in a AI agent and then can get deployed to those learners, to those employees in the flow of work at any time that they want through simple questions. And knowledge management has always been a challenge when the architecture hasn't been built right. It's not accessible. It's hard to get to. It's out of date. And AI can access that information, the most recent information, simply by loading it, not by how well you program it. And so we've been testing for a little while now, management coaches in businesses. So where we've done a management development program, we've created an AI agent with all of that management development content, and with the right prompts and with the right other kind of employee information that goes in that agent, means that people can ask it questions at any time. And I'm only going to do 2 questions, right? Because you don't want to sit through another demo. I think you get the point. But if I just bring back up the screen that I had earlier, hopefully you can. I've just got to move my view out of the way. So we had an Elev-8 way coach. We've now got an Elev-8 management coach. So essentially, imagine that you've delivered a training program, a learning program, whether that's blended digital, it doesn't really matter. But take the content and feed it into an AI agent. Can you help me structure a one-to-one conversation with a team member using the AID model from the Elev-8 training? I need to give feedback on someone's repeated lateness and want it to be constructive, clear, and supportive. As an idea, right? You could put a really small brief in here. The more information you give it, the more background you give it to the conversation you've already been having with that person, the better it's going to come out, right? And again, I can go out to the internet and I can ask for it, the AID model, but I don't know what I don't know, right? So I might have just said, can you give me a performance management framework or feedback framework, and it will bring back a result. And it's not only telling me what the model is, but it's even giving me suggestions on what I can say for this particular problem and how I can give that evidential kind of context that says that I've witnessed this, and this is the way that I want to go about this conversation. And it's feeding on the original bit of content. But you touched on this already, so I think we get the point that AI is particularly strong in translation. And this is where, for Donna's business, global business, this is a game changer, because I'm now not having to translate the content at source. I can let the AI agent do the translation. And if I wanted to, I could type that command in Spanish, so it can it can transverse between the different languages. So I can ask it the question in Spanish, but Donna's business is a English speaking business language organization. So therefore most people would come to it in English, but it means that I can flip into my native language really, really quickly. And this for us is massive, because we're now not just reliant on those managers and the culture of those managers to drive coaching in the organization when we're supporting learning. So yeah, that's the bit for me about in the flow work coaching, and got it as an option on my phone, on my laptop, and you can plug this into systems too. So quick demo just to show how I think it's a bit of a game changer for coaching.
Thanks, Lee. And maybe just going to ask maybe Terry to come in, because obviously, again, what's great about all this tools is a company like us, and pardon the pun, but our ability to fuse them all together into a cohesive experience, right? So that I guess the benefit is that companies don't have to go off and say, how do I get this bit and put it in? What we're in essence doing is building some of our own tech, but also then integrating and fusing the things. So it's just easier for the L&D person to go do that. But yeah, I mean, Terry, maybe useful just to give another practical example of how you're looking to use this particular bit.
Yeah, so at Hilti, our number one job profile is field sales. So we actually go to our customers and we sell in the field. And what we find with new salespeople is the ability to ask the wrong question or not have questions ready to be asked. So we're working with Fuse to build a coach to be able to say something like to the effect of, I'm about to go talk to ABC Construction. I'm talking to a person on a job site. Here's what they're working on. Here's what I want to talk about. What would be 10 good questions to start the conversation? And the reason why we're doing that is to try to help our account managers focus less on asking the right question and more on what the customer says. So how can we blend that? And we're working with them right now to help build that coach. And what we see is we're just using existing content that we have. And it's just a matter of the coach being able to pull from that content when a question is asked and driving it forward. And so far, I think it's going to be a success for us. We're going to pilot it with about 50 salespeople and see the feedback that we get, and then hopefully launch it for 18,000 salespeople. So that's the idea.
And Donna, just again, from your practitioner, this is you've been I guess an advocate of this concept for a long time. So just really curious how you see across different programs this bit of technology being used.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I'm partnering with Leon. So for our first line manager, because for me, if we have those nudges, if we have the coaching, it really helps to embed some of the learning that people are doing. It means it's at the touch of their fingertips. So for me, I think that anything that we can do that's really starting to embed, get them to think a little bit differently, that's driving that change. So it's something that I'm actually quite passionate about, and I think it's something that can be a real game changer for us.
And Donna, it doesn't just have to be content that we've written. It can be tacit knowledge sat within kind of communities as well. So if you've got a place where people are contributing views, learns, things they tried and failed, so that whole kind of peer community and peer coaching can then that can be pulled on too, right? So, and that's where it's huge.
I was going to say, I think this is a journey for all of us. I think every time that we think we've worked it out, something pops up and goes, that changes the game again, right? So I think we all appreciate this is a pretty fluid landscape for us. And yeah, just maybe keen, there's a lot, I think, today, right? But it's interesting when you look at a program and then you look at the tasks inside there, what would be really interesting to think about your teams? Really curious about the people who are the practitioners, right? How do you see this impacting your teams and the roles of those teams? Because it does, when I'm looking outside, and even for my internal teams, it changes some of those roles completely. Some of them it supercharges them, and some of it does put them at risk. Just curious on what you guys have to think about that.
I think roles change with the integration of technology. So yeah, I think those more administrative roles will become potentially at risk, but it just supercharges, like you said, supercharges sales and those kind of areas. So yeah, it's an evolution, but there'll be new roles, won't they, that come with it.
Yeah, you look at some of it, and I think to that bit, right? You do look at it and think the people, because even the AI course builder is not going to build the perfect course first time, and I think this is a really interesting analogy I was thinking about. It's because you still want to refine it. That's still 20% refining. But the person that's going to refine it, right, it's like, and apologies for my analogy, has been nationality, all right? But if you look at like a Ferrari and the Ferrari car and a Lewis Hamilton in that F1 car, if I'm in the F1 car, it's an amazing car with this amazing tool, but I'm not going to hit the best lap time. You know, as Lewis Hamilton's talking to the engineers, he's talking about his experience and his knowledge, knows how to get the most out of a tool to create the best lap time inside it. So I think whether that's the AI curation tool, it's the AI coaching tool, it's the AI course builder tool, in the hands of the experienced person, it's huge. At the same time, though, in the hands of a basic person, SME, they can get something out with no hassle. So I think it does hit on both sides, right? You could give it to SMEs and they can start to pump out their own stuff because you don't have enough people in that centralized L&D. But at the same time, that centralized L&D person, let's say the artist that's able to say, I want this image in this type of, you know, noir type thing or impressionist type part towards it, or this type of technique. The person who is really deeply in expertise now has a supercharger to go through it. It's a little bit like Iron Man and Jarvis, right? Iron Man's going to got let out of Jarvis, right? Because his understanding of physics and so forth is so deep. So I do think there's a really interesting thing inside here. But I think what's clear though, right, whatever those roles, is those that are putting their heads in the sand are probably definitely at the biggest risk. So I'm going to leave that on this. I want to say something happy. Don't let me leave on that. Go for
Steve,
it.
I think one interesting thing you flashed up a kind of image of learning experience designer, and I think, you know, I've got content developers in my team, and I think the switch or move towards learning experience designer is a really interesting one on the basis of, if our organization has an ambition to grow in a market or break into a different market, a different apprenticeship, a different kind of training proposition, my age-old problem over the years has been, if we want to do that, I need another content developer and another SME, and I need to kind of grow at the same rate and exponentially. We cannot continue to grow our business and then put all the cost into content design by employing more people in my team. Whereas what this will give me is an opportunity to, or these tools will give me is an opportunity to have a core set of very good AI development people who are good at prompting, great experienced designers that don't need the base knowledge and can work quickly with an SME to kind of produce the content. So I can grow a business, double the size of the business, but not double the size of my team. And I think that's the big game changer, I think, for us.
I agree. I agree. And maybe the minute ago, I think that's, just for those that don't know, as a training organization, the other big thing I think for you, Phil, right, is the ability to take, so that in that same vein, but to take that base knowledge or course content program design and talk to it so that you're now changing it from one vendor to another. For the ability to say, change all the metaphors and analogies from JLR to BMW, not that you would, right? But, you know, literally it's talking to that versus the amount of time, the ability to personalize and therefore also add value, right? I think add value to that bit. And then to the other bit, the ability to not have to have coaches keep, you know, scaling. Instead of having one of your coaches to 30 people, you can have one coach to 80 people. And if the values are still high, but the basic stuff's done, and they got a 24/7 coach that's always there, that's maybe 50% as good or 70% as good. So
exactly that. I dropped in a chat for people that an ambition would be a human coach and an AI coach combine and collaborate on supporting a learner. And in that way, learners who are pretty self-served and pretty well supported in their workplace, they can kind of have an AI coach kind of keep nudging them along, but the human coach can work with those learners that need a bit more support, a bit more focus and whatever. That means we can grow our caseloads, gives us a bigger learner base.
And I think the last point before we dial off, right? I think again, for us that, and Charles, I think, you know, I think a lot of people on this call probably are followers and advocates of the things that you've been talking about for 20 years about driving learning for performance. Same as Donna, I think, and Phil and the rest of us, right? I think what these tools allow, but if we look at the reality is not as many organizations in the last 20, 30 years have got there. Right. I mean, Terry has, but Terry, you know, you have, you know, at Hilti, you've transformed how you create content to get there. I think what the tools are really interesting about is how do we allow organizations that have the vision that you put forward a long time ago, Charles, get there without having to reinvent themselves completely.
And Steve, what we've talked about today, I think just illustrates that it's an easier journey now. The AI and these approaches just make the journey a whole lot easier than it has been. That's why, you know, many organizations haven't been able to realize it because it's been so damn difficult in the past.
So exciting.
And I think also, sorry, just to add my little bit, I think it's also making coaching accessible for everyone. So it might be that the top layers that you're driving performance coaching. And then as you drop down the layers, if you like, it might be a different form of coaching that you provide. I think it makes it affordable and accessible.
Yeah, and I was going to say one point to that. I think, and I think also the tone of what we've shown today is just text-based, but within a couple of, a short period of time, it's going to be, even in our platform, voice-activated coaching. So again, having that part where you've got someone to talk to, that's scarily, and the really weird thing is when you get it to clone your voice and people are actually talking to themselves. I don't know who wants to do that, but people are. And on that strange thought, I want to just say a huge thanks to the panelists, especially to Donna, Dr. DJ, to CJ, to Charles, and to Lee, for the knowledge that they put the time inside it, and then also for everyone to contribute with questions as well. We have had a lot of people jump out, but thank you so much, guys. I think it was a really cool session. I think there's lots of great ideas shared, and we're on a journey together. So it's going to be fun, going to be exciting, and definitely a big major learning journey for us, our own continuous learning journey on this stuff. Cheers all.